How many of you are Doctor Who fans? You may know about what's going on, but let's talk about it anyway. Apparently, we've got this story from The Sun, which I don't know if I can... I don't know if I trust The Sun too much, but we have another story from the Daily Mail, which I also don't trust too much. But I thought it'd be interesting to talk about because this narrative is going around that Doctor Who ratings plunge after Jodie Whittaker takes over with PC plots. Angry viewers have described recent episodes as lectures as the show explores issues like racism, male pregnancy, and disabilities. And that's the narrative going around, which I don't think is entirely accurate, but not in. There's nuance in all things, and basically what they're saying is that with Jodie Whittaker taking over, and these politically correct plots that come off like lectures on social issues, people are mad. Viewership is down, and viewership is down to an extent, but it's not. It's actually up. I think viewership is actually up relatively from last season. I don't know if they include that in here, but we'll read the story, and I've got the other story from Daily Mail. We can read that too. Doctor Who has lost a quarter of its viewers as many blast politically correct storylines since Jodie Whittaker entered the TARDIS. Now, for those that aren't familiar, Doctor Who is a really, really old show about a time-traveling doctor. And there's different iterations where after a certain amount of time, the Doctor will transform into a different actor. It's kind of how they keep the show alive. We had Peter Capaldi I think Peter Capaldi was the last one. He's a Scottish actor, I believe. And now they've replaced him with Jodie Whittaker. So basically what happens is once his run as Doctor Who is up, he regenerates and poof, now he's Jodie Whittaker, and they have a new... This is the first time it's been a female. Although I believe that in Doctor Who canon, they're called Time Lords. They regenerate into different people. Like, turning into male-female was like a normal thing. But this was supposed to be a big deal because now Doctor Who is a woman and everyone's excited. And so the controversy is that because they did this switch, and because they're doing these weird social justice narratives, that the show is hurting. Like, you can see this photo here. We've got a pregnant man. The first female Time Lord's debut last month attracted an average audience of 8.2 million. But that plunged to 6.1 million on Sunday. And look, I want to point out, that's like normal for most shows, you know? When a show debuts, a ton of people want to see it, and then the people who don't like it just don't come back. Fans have voiced their outrage at the new episodes claiming the BBC are trying too hard to be PC. Fans complained of being bombarded by preachy, serious messages instead of sci-fi entertainment. Producers under new boss Chris Chibnall have opted to tackle issues such as racism as Jodie, 36, traveled back to meet civil rights icon Rosa Parks in the US in 1955. That's kind of weird, right? I remember I watched one episode. I've seen a ton of Doctor Who, but there's one episode where, they go to a planet where nanobots are killing people and leaving behind just dust and bones and using their flesh, to grow plants or something. And basically, the plot of the story was that if you weren't happy, then, if you were sad, these robots viewed sadness as a contagion. Because if you were sad, you'd make other people sad. So they started just killing anybody who was sad. You see what that story's about? It's just about this interesting idea that emotions can travel from person to person. That if you're sad, someone else might become sad. That's the kind of episode... There have been other episodes that have had messages, for sure. But now when you hear that they're going back in time to tackle... to meet Rosa Parks, it's kind of a head-scratcher. What? Next week, they have British imperialism in their sights. In 1947 India. What? I don't know, man. What's some other episodes? Off the top of my head, the one I can think about is the unhappiness. But a lot of the episodes are specifically about, it's sci-fi. You know, one episode is... There's a ship the Doctor goes into, and there's a mirror, and whenever there's a time difference on one side of the mirror. When he looks in, he sees a little girl's bedroom, and then every few minutes he looks back, and she's older and older and older, and then eventually they go on an adventure together. It's very sci-fi, very fantasy, very entertainment. Why they're exploring pregnant man giving birth, Rosa Parks in India, it just seems like the show's very different. And you know, I'm going to be critical of the Sun's use of this image here. It's a really bad screen grab. They're really trying to smear Doctor Who, in my opinion. I do think the new season is kind of weird, but Jodie Whittaker is the first ever female Time Lord. But the BBC have gone to extreme lengths to ensure the new series is as inclusive as possible. So here's what we have. The first episode was The Woman Who Fell to Earth. That's from the latest season. 8.2 million viewers. And The Ghost Monument. Notice I don't think they bring that one up. 7.1 million. Then they have Rosa Parks, and that fell to 6 million. Arachnids in the UK, 6.4 million. And the Suranga Conundrum down to 6.1 million, and that's the pregnant man episode. A viewer tweeted, "That's the last episode I'll be watching. I don't watch this type of TV show to get subliminal PC lectures. It's supposed to be entertainment." The BBC hoped to boost ratings, which slumped under Jodie's predecessor, Peter Capaldi, but they dipped to 5.9 million in parts of Sunday's episode. The Beeb had high hopes of boosting the flagging viewers' figures of Doctor Who when Peter Capaldi, 59, had the role. This year, the corporation even moved the show from Saturday to Sunday nights in the hope it might attract more viewers. Listen, when I was a kid, I used to watch shows with moral lessons. One of my favorite shows ever was Static Shock. Static Shock was awesome because they dealt with social issues and it was a kids show, but they did it right. Like, a lot of people have said Static Shock is social justice done right, where they don't beat you over the head, they don't accuse you of being the monster for being white or being a male, they just point out how people feel, right? So the main character, Virgil, he's a young black teenager. He gets pushed into like a gang, he's peer pressured into some gang fight, and there's like a chemical explosion, everybody gets superpowers, and then he decides to become a superhero, and a lot of people decide to become supervillains because they're like, they were criminals and gangs and stuff. And it deals with issues of racism, like he goes to his friend's house, and his friend's dad is racist, and you can empathize with the main character when you see this racist guy saying mean things about him. You're like, hey man, that's not cool. Virgil's a cool dude. He's a hero. He's a superhero. And then you have another episode where his friend turns out to be gay, and like how they deal with that. And it makes you empathize without beating you over the head. They don't say you're the bad guy. They say, you're a friend. You're someone who can empathize with this. But here's the point. They did that right. I'm not saying Doctor Who is doing it wrong. I'm saying, why the hell is a show for adults trying to do childlike lectures? This kind of stuff about like Rosa Parks, it's for kids, man. Like, you do this stuff for kids. Adults want to watch things that are, God, this photo's so awful. Come on, man. Come on, The Sun. That's a terrible photo. As an adult, I think I would like to watch a show with cool ideas that ask interesting questions. What I like about Doctor Who is that they have these various sci-fi scenarios that are just rather interesting. I'm a much bigger fan of Star Trek. The reason I like Star Trek: The Next Generation so much is that it deals with the philosophical consequences of technology, of technological advancement, and of different cultures and how different cultures can interact. And they use Star Trek uses the sci-fi aspect, the ability to travel to different planets, as a way to present different cultures and different technologies and how they would interact with our ideas. It's fascinating. Like one episode is they have a trial over whether or not an android is actually a sentient life form who has rights. And, Captain Picard argues that, who are we to determine who is and isn't alive? If they assert their sentience, then we must respect it for these reasons. It's brilliant. And Doctor Who has a lot of similar elements. But I don't want to watch Doctor Who to learn about a man being pregnant or to see them go back in time and deal with, Rosa Parks or whatever. Now, more importantly, I think this Sun article is really pushing it because as they mentioned that Peter Capaldi's ratings dipped. They didn't mention his ratings were also around like 5 or 6 million. So this actually looks like it's kind of an improvement. In my opinion, look, is it fair to criticize Doctor Who? Sure, for sure. Seems like a different show. Like, I gotta admit, man, I'm never gonna watch an episode about Rosa Parks, right? I'm never going to watch the pregnant man episode. Like, I just don't even understand how that makes sense. Are they going to give him a C-section? Like, men are ill-equipped to, men don't have birth canals, right? So I'd be curious as to how they did the episode. I also have no interest in watching preachy lecture political ideology shows. One rule that I always have is that whenever somebody wants to get involved in the culture war, I count myself out. Not interested. I'm not interested in your weird political arguments, your weird political debate. Here I am talking about it. But I just look. You know what, Doctor Who? That's really cool. Like, here's what I say to people. That's really cool that you're doing your show. It's really cool for Jodie Whittaker that she gets to be the Doctor. That's fine. I'd actually be interested in watching Doctor Who with Jodie Whittaker if I wasn't hearing about these weird, like, going back to Rosa Parks. What? I watched, maybe I'm wrong, but I watched an episode where, like, they opened a portal into a pocket time dimension where they unleashed a bunch of Time Lords, and there's like an intergalactic war, and you know what I mean? Like, robots killing people with nanotechnology because they're unhappy is very, very different from going back in time to learn a lesson about Rosa Parks, of which I'm sure they got wrong anyway because it's an extremely complicated history. But I will say the Sun seems to be just kind of anti-Doctor at the moment. I actually haven't watched any of Jodie Whittaker's Doctor Who stuff. They say, the new series has seen a downfall in viewing figures since the first episode, losing nearly 2 million watchers. But I think it's important to point out, as I kind of did already, that's pretty normal for most shows. My understanding is that although it's dipped down to 5.9, it's kind of on par with where it was last season. So I wouldn't say it's, like, doing really bad. Here's what I can say. Has it become a preachy social justice kind of show? I mean, it does kind of look that way. Admittedly, I haven't watched any of the new season, but I haven't because I've been hearing about this kind of stuff. It kind of puts me off and I don't want to watch it. It's possible then that maybe the ratings are where they are because people like me aren't interested in watching an episode about a pregnant man or Rosa Parks or going back to 1947 India to deal with British imperialism. I just don't find it interesting to have a time-traveling, shape-shifting type, omnipotent type being or whatever go back to Earth history to teach me lessons about history. Like, I'd rather see them go to a planet full of, like, giant green blob creatures that eat each other or something fun and science fiction-y. Like, this just doesn't seem like fun to me at all. So maybe, but at the same time, if they are losing viewers, maybe they're gaining a different type of viewer. I think one of the reasons we see a lot of this political correct social justice content transformation among all of these different, mediums is that companies are expecting a demographic change. Right, they're watching it. The white demographic in various countries are not reproducing nearly as fast as minority demographics. And so these companies are probably trying to get in front of that so they can say, hey, look, we're diverse, we're social justice. But I gotta admit, I think even among the Latino community, the black community, the Asian community, they're less concerned about you waving your little finger at them claiming to be in favor of diversity as they are just also looking for interesting content, right? I don't think the fact that someone is white or not determines whether or not they're going to want to watch a show. I just want interesting episodes. I don't want you to preach. I want to see robots shoot laser beams and fly around and travel through time. Is that too much to ask? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the sun's biased, but it is what it is. I'm going to get out of here. You can catch me on my main channel, youtube.com/Timcast tomorrow at 4 p.m., and I'll see you then.